Yeah, so right now I got Martin Reeder, born in 1984, from Comox, BC, 6'5", 2012 Canadian Olympian in the beach volleyball world. With Olympic partner was Josh Binstock. I read that you used to be a swimmer, and that was a true passion for you as a child. You had dreams of representing Canada at a very young age, in the pool specifically. Who introduced you to volleyball, and who was the inspirational figure that made you change your focus and believe that it was possible for you to represent Canada in another sport?
Well, that's a lot to summarize. I'll do my best to do that question justice.
Okay.
It started off in the pool. I just loved swimming and I loved competing. And regretfully, when I was 10 years old, I wound up getting an allergic reaction to chlorine and had exercise-induced asthma just pretty much on set. And I had to quit swimming cold turkey. So as we all know, swimming is really demanding in terms of time. So I had a lot of free time at that point in my life and a lot of competitive spirit. I wound up actually finding beach volleyball because an event was in my hometown, 1993, and the best players of that era, St. John Smith, Randy Stoklos, Mike Dodds, Tim Hovland, they came up to my small hometown on Vancouver Island, and they played a beach volleyball exhibition match for charity in an ice rink full of sand. And I was 11, and I saw that, and it blew my mind. It coming from Vancouver Island, I love being outdoors. I love being on the sand on the beach, and so it was there. I could do that, and I wanted that, so I wrote in the journal that I moved to Australia and played professional beach volleyball for a living. And then in 1996, the Olympics, changed everything through the ranks.
Right on. So
Timing was perfect.
yeah, obviously. So did you have a career on the indoor side of things, or was kind of beach your thing right from the start?
So I did, and beach volleyball.
Sorry, say again. Your phone cut out there.
Getting athletes who are specializing early now in beach volleyball, which I find very interesting because I learned how to play volleyball indoors, and I played through the club system on Vancouver Island in BC. I played in the BC Summer Games when I was in grade 10. National championships for club. I actually formed to go to practice my grade 12 year for the Victoria team. That was an incredibly formative time. I then played for Camosun College for 2 years and captained my second year there. Won a national. I then went to UBC and was starting power hitter for UBC for a season. It all started indoors, and I truly believe that to reach the highest level of beach volleyball, you should definitely pursue indoor as long as you can. The intensity, the camaraderie, the pressure, and then transition to beach volleyball. I went and did 21 World Championships, and that was when I decided to pursue beach volleyball full time.
Right on. So what sort of sources did Canada have, resources did you have at that time? Obviously playing at UBC, there's lots of I'm a BC boy, so I know UBC quite well. What sort of resources were there for the beach game when you went through the system? Like, beach, in my opinion, has grown a lot in the last, let's say 4 to 8 years. I see a major growth in it in the Calgary area where I reside now. But I know possibly. I had a chance to be coached by Ryan Hofer back at BC Summer Games back when there was beach courts beside Sharks Club in Langley, BC there. And, got a chance to, learn from him for a bit there. Didn't end up pursuing the BC Summer Games, but definitely had a couple months worth of training with him, which I found very interesting. But back then, beach wasn't necessarily in the public eye, if you will.
So it's a wild ride. Like, beach volleyball was honestly an athlete-directed sport from the beginning. And I played Team BC since I was 15 years old in the summertime. Yeah. I definitely don't say that I was specializing in beach volleyball. I just played beach volleyball in the summertime, and I played volleyball for Team BC all the way up until 20. So I had summers of beach volleyball, and that was always my off-season, having fun. We do a seaside trip. Shout out to Paul Mend and Chris Densmore, two incredible coaches,
right
leaders in the sport.
Yeah.
Leaders in the sport for British Columbia. Those were just so much fun. And we competed for a month through training camps, and then went to provincials. And those were all incredible times. But there really was no bridge between the provincial team and the national team, because there really wasn't a national team program.
Right.
And you needed to make your own way to get there, because there was John Child and Mark Keese and Conrad Lineman and Jody Holden, who were up there competing internationally and doing things, and they were the national team, and so they would receive funding and they would do that. But to really get and break through to that, we didn't have a national team training center. Everything was built by those athletes. So for me, as a small town BC boy, there was really no guidance to make it to the national team other than competing in the national championships. And so I competed in the national championships at U24 level when I was 21, after having won multiple national championships in U18 and then U20, moved up to U24, played against the big boys at that time, and then moved into the senior national championships when I was 22. But moving back, I always, even through college, beach volleyball was just fun. Even though I loved it, it was my kind of off-season, just way to get out and play and work out and just make myself a better indoor player. But at a certain point, I decided that beach volleyball was more important to me. That was when I was 21. I said that I moved over to play in the Under-21 World Championships. So I went over to Toronto for the entire summer and created my own camp. And I just lived at the beach every single day and just played with whoever I tried getting as much street credit as possible, playing with every single person and just representing myself out there. There was absolutely no national team at that time. It was just me living with a couple other BC guys who committed to doing the same thing. And from there, I wound up getting invited to play overseas next season on the FIVB circuit with Brian. He asked me to be his blocker. Went overseas for 3 months, just trained around Europe and played in tours. That was the start and introduction of my professional beach volleyball career. And then the season in October, a gentleman by the name of Jesse Lilliet, still a great friend, BC boy, he was actually Jason Hofer's partner when Jason Hofer was at his peak, just unreal athletes. And he asked me to move down to Brazil with him to train with the Brazilian teams, the top Brazilian athletes, and I said yes. And so I left school, I left UBC, and committed to becoming a professional beach volleyball player. But what that entailed was we created our own training camp with our own coaches, who was Brazilian, so I had to learn how to speak Portuguese. We paid Brazilian dollars in reais. We trained every single day with top Brazilian teams down on Ipanema Beach in Rio de Janeiro, and I did that for 3 years January through April, I created my own training camps with different partners. Ray Sewell from Alberta was one of those athletes that I trained full time with.
Right on.
But there was no national team, man. We had to create our own, and it was in 2009 that there was some type of formulation. We hired a coach, and Beach Volleyball Canada was seeking money from On the Podium, and so they needed to create a national team training center. And 2010, I had to move to Toronto to be a part of the national team. If I didn't do that, then there was no way that I could get funding. So it wasn't until 2010 that Beach Volleyball Canada really instituted a plan.
Yeah.
But before then, it was an athlete-directed, what I call an athlete entrepreneur sport, where you had to do everything if you wanted to make it.
Yeah, fair enough. So going through that process, obviously, financially, there's definitely some financial hardship, trying to find sponsorships, paying coaches, paying whatever, beach fees, court fees, and all that stuff for your training. What part of your career, did you truly believe that I got a shot at the Olympics, and it was kind of within your grasp?
So the inspirational part of me wants to say always, but it really wasn't until 2011. Everything that happened before that, I played for Team Canada from 2005 onwards, to maybe 2004. It was always a pipe dream. It was always, I'm playing this to play beach volleyball. I didn't play beach volleyball to be a world champion. I didn't play beach volleyball to be a national champion or continental champion, which I have 2 out of those 3. I'm definitely not a world champion, unfortunately. It was to play in the Olympic Games. That was beach volleyball to me. The pinnacle of the sport was played at the Olympics. And after watching the 2000 Olympics in Bondi Beach, Australia, I would love anyone who's interested in beach volleyball to YouTube Bondi Beach Olympics beach volleyball and just see what that did for the sport, because that was when it exploded. And so I always wanted it, but how close it was is open interpretation. My interpretation is it was absolutely not close, but every single year played an integral role into the next one, and every partnership that I had played an integral role into making me a better player for the next partner. And so in 2011, I split with Kane Schalk after 2, fairly successful years, but we just lost mojo, and I wound up hurting myself, and that was when I had to take a pause. I herniated 2 discs in my back, and I needed to completely reevaluate what I was doing, who I was playing with, how I was approaching being a professional athlete, how I was going to make it to the Olympics, because in 2011, there was a new pathway to get to London. So previously, before the 2012 Olympics, so let's say 2008, after that Olympic Games, they created a NORCECA berth. So there was 5 berths per continental federation, which prior to that didn't exist. You had to be one of the top 24, I believe, teams in the world to make it to the Olympics. This allowed 1 berth per country, per continent, to come in that did not come in through the top rankings of the league. And so knowing we had that pathway, I was able to find a partner in Josh, and we committed like I've never committed to anything before in my life to achieve that berth for Canada. And I remember walking into CTV headquarters in Toronto in October 2011, and walking into their office, and we had a meeting with their director of marketing for sports and programming. And we told him, we're going to be the team that goes to the Olympics for beach volleyball, and you should probably start following us right now. And not that he laughed, but he's like, okay, perfect, I'll take your names and this and that. And, they didn't do it, but I say that because Josh and I, in October 2011, mentally, we were the team that was going to the Olympics. And there was arguably 5 other teams that had an equal shot at that point in time, and over the span of, I think it was 8 events in that season, Josh and I were able to be first ranked out of those teams for Canada. We then won the Continental Championships and won the berth in Canada against Christian Redmond and Ben Saxton to go to the Olympics. So let's just say I did not know I was Olympics or the dream could become a reality until we won that game on home soil 2 weeks before London. And we were the last team of the entire Canadian delegation of all sports.
Yeah.
We're the last athletes to be on the Canadian delegation.
That's
2 weeks
crazy.
before the Olympics.
Yeah. So from what I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, that was basically a do or die type of game versus Saxton there. And did that go the distance, or was that in straight sets?
It was in straight sets.
Yeah.
So just to give people some context, the Continental Championships, which I won with Kane Schalk in 2011 in Dominican Republic, was really a Davis Cup style event. So it was a new style where two Canadian teams would play together, an A team and a B team, and then you would play another country, A versus B, and play a Davis Cup style where if there was a tie across the board, there would have to be a golden set. And that golden set was a single set. Any athlete, so any one of the four athletes could play together, and you play a single set to 15. And so Cam and I won that against Cuba in 2011, and then Josh and I wound up winning that. We didn't go to the golden set we played Mexico in the finals, and we won 15-13 in the third. So we actually played with Christian and Ben to earn the berth for Canada, and a week later, we had to compete against them to earn that spot. So we had 1 week where we were able to train and focus on strictly strategizing for Ben and Christian, and we were able to really set up a great plan, and we won that match, I think, 21-18, 21-14.
Right on. Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, obviously, Ben represented Canada at the last Olympics here, and so it's kudos to. I love the Saxton family. They're great. Entrepreneurs of the volleyball sport, and great people to look up to here in Calgary, and have only big things to say about the whole family, the whole Saxton family, and what they do for the sport of volleyball. So it is because you beat that team in that game. Is there inter-rivalry, if you will? I mean, obviously competition's competition, but is it left on the beach? Is it something that that people take with them when it gets to that high level of gameplay?
In all other instances, I would say yes, it's left. In that instance, that was our lives.
Right.
It was the 15 years was built up to that moment, and that was the highest I've ever calibrated as a human being on this planet. Not even at the Olympics did I come close to elevating my game to that level of focus and attention and presence. And there was nowhere to run because there's about 2,500 people up to that single match. It was everything, and we're fortunate enough to have been on the winning side of that match. I, truth be told, can't even imagine what that would have been like to lose there. That would have been devastating. And I'm friends with both of those athletes, but it really wasn't until 3, 4, 5 years after that game that I was able to really, for both of us, both with Ben and both with Christian, become good friends again and be able to communicate in a way that, is indicative of our friendship.
Fair enough.
That was everything in that match. When you're pitted against your close friends, I've played with both of those guys. We're all very close, but when something of that magnitude is on the line, it cuts really deep.
Yeah, no, fair enough. So getting that berth for Canada, tell me about the experience in London for 2012.
It was incredible. I mean, that as an athlete growing up, you look to the Olympics as the big stadium on earth. I mean, it's the biggest place, biggest congregation of athletes on the planet, and it's just amazing to go there to experience an Olympic Village with 11,000 people. It's the best venues in the world. All these big presidents, so walking around surrounded by just specimens. It was incredible, and watching the other events and being a part of a team and representing your country. I mean, it was everything it was supposed to be, and then some. There were so many special experiences for me, for Josh and I. I have some strong friendships in my life because of that single experience to this day. Other great athletes, coaches. I mean, I could go on for a long time, but it was so special, and still to this day, it's one of the most important experiences of my life. So happy to direct that wherever you want me to, but it was amazing to represent Canada.
Was there a specific moment, as a player there that, you will obviously remember to the very end, or was there a moment, just being an observer, maybe watching another event that really hit home with you?
I'll share two.
Okay.
One was Josh and we were in the tunnel coming out before our first game against Great Britain, in Great Britain. 12,000 people just losing their minds. They were selling wine bottles from wine glasses, so it was pretty rowdy. As we all know, beach volleyball can get pretty hyped up. So the music was pumping.
Nice.
The announcers were flying. It was crazy, and the stadium was aluminum, so everyone's smashing their feet, and you could feel it in your lungs. You could feel the energy of the stadium in your lungs. My lungs were nearly exploding, and I was so nervous, like beyond nervous in that moment, because it was my first game at the Olympics. There was something like 40 million people tuned in live through 14 HD cameras in the court. There's all these distractions. My family's in there. Everyone who means something to me is in the stands. I'm representing my country. I was just like, oh gosh, this is so big. This is so big. And I hadn't really realized it until then. And I wound up just going through this flashback of all the moments from when I was first introduced to the sport, to playing Team BC, to playing Team Canada, to playing with different partners, to winning different events, to earning the berth. And in that moment, I realized that I was supposed to be there. I had earned the right to be there. I no longer questioned myself. And I was able to graduate from this, scared, nervous, afraid of this event to just owning that I had earned the right to be there with Josh, and we had done everything we possibly could. And I was proud of how Josh said, we're supposed to be here. We're representing Canada. It's on us. Yeah. And that fear turned into ownership. I'm not saying that I was no longer afraid, but I was able to flip the script and really own the responsibility in a way that I was proud of and I was ready for. And we ran out onto the stadium, or into the stadium, and I just took 15 seconds in the center of the court, and I just slowly did a 360. And I just stared up into the stadium, and I just owned it. And I looked up and went, this is the best experience of my life. And I didn't run away from it. And so that was huge. That taught me responsibility and ownership in a way that, you can't simulate in visual training or mental training. You had to be there. And then the second story is I got to watch Rosie McLennan win her Olympic gold there on trampoline. So as an athlete, I went and watched, and I got to see the Canadian flag go up, and I got to cry just because it's so incredible to be an athlete, win a medal, especially a gold medal for Canada, and to sing the national anthem in a stadium and to support a friend. It was super emotional. And maybe I'll share one more, because
Yeah.
This is really fun.
Yeah.
Josh and I wound up getting tickets to go see tennis, the semifinals of tennis. So we went to the Wimbledon site, and we went to our seats, and all of a sudden we realized we're going through a tunnel, and we're pretty close to courtside. And so I come up a stairwell to find my seats, and the first person I see is Kobe Bryant.
Right on.
And so I have my Olympic lanyard. You don't go anywhere without your Olympic lanyard around your neck with your passes and this and that, and you're clearly an athlete. And so I legitimately am about 3 or 4 feet away from Kobe Bryant at the top of the stairs, and I just go, "What's up, Kobe?" And he kind of gives me this head nod. And then I look down at my ticket, and I have better seats than Kobe Bryant for the tennis. So Josh and I were able to watch Andy Murray beat Roger Federer. We were 4 seats off of courtside at the Wimbledon center court, and then we watched Serena Williams absolutely demolish another girl in the semifinals. But it was just so cool. It's amazing being there as an athlete. And I say that about Kobe Bryant. Kobe saw us as peers because we were Olympians too. And so in that moment, I was able to look at Kobe, and he looked at me, and there's a mutual respect. And I just, in my mind was like, I've made it.
Fair enough. Well,
Kobe gave me the nod.
The funny thing you mentioned Kobe Bryant is I took my U18 team this year to Las Vegas, and Kobe Bryant's daughter actually plays club volleyball. So Kobe was in the house in Mandalay Bay there for the tournament, which is a fairly large tournament for female club teams, but. Unfortunately, I didn't get as close as you did. There was probably 20 security guards within, a 50-foot radius around him. No one was getting close to him. So, but his daughter's in the sport, and it's good to see, other professional athletes, supporting their kids in the sport of volleyball. So,
absolutely,
it's awesome. So what made you retire after 2012?
So I wasn't supposed to retire, to be totally honest with you. Josh was supposed to retire, and I was supposed to continue playing. But, one thing that no one prepares you for is the empty space after the biggest games of your life. And so when we came off the Olympics, I spent a portion of 12, 15 years building up and be creating the space for the Olympics to show up in my life, and then it happened, and all of a sudden I kind of felt empty. I didn't have the goal anymore. I didn't have the desire to continue competing because I was hurt. I was broken. I was emotionally, I had nothing left, and so I continued playing with Josh, and that was really hard for both of us. Josh, he wanted to continue to compete, and he was more fired up, and I wanted to be able to enjoy the Olympic experience, but I had to continue playing, and I still enjoyed obviously playing.
Yeah, for sure.
It just wasn't the same for me after, and I'm not going to say that I was lost, but no one had spoken about what happened after. And I realized that there was just a big hole in my heart. And so I continued playing. I tried out for the national team again. Chapter and I actually started a preseason training together. So in 2012, October, maybe September through December, Josh and I actually split up after the Olympics. We had a few discussions after the Olympics, and we just felt it was best that that was such an incredible experience that happened in such a short period of time, and it was so intense that we just needed to digest it. And I love playing with Josh and believe that we still, if we were to partner up right now, we'd still do some damage internationally. But actually, Josh just won the Vancouver Open this weekend with Dan Deering, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the same mojo anymore, and I wanted to build myself outside of volleyball, and I wanted to be able to help the volleyball community in a way that I hadn't been able to necessarily through the net, although I hosted a tournament in 2008 in my hometown, which was an incredible experience. But, you know, I wanted to transition all of the things that I've learned through sport into life and build something that was outside of volleyball that could allow me to express my love for the sport and my love for human performance. And so I chose to retire January 1st, 2013, because everything that I'd done in beach volleyball, I wanted to apply that into my life. And I was kind of over the national team at that point in time, not in a negative way, but, you know, I was the national team. You're fighting for this tiny piece of pie against a lot of your close friends. And at that point in time, there wasn't the culture at the national team training center and what was happening there. You know, I just wanted to make my own culture. And so I decided to retire and move into fitness, which was a huge passion of mine, because I was always that athlete that prided themselves on being the fittest person at the beach. And, you know, that was my next step, and have done that for the last 4.5 years, and recently have transitioned back into sport because there's so much on the mental side of things that I overlooked that I really want to bring into youth sport now, and that I've been practicing leading up to the Olympics and after, where I think the mental game is really what needs to be worked on more. And I think a lot of people are just, including myself, hey man, I was this person. My deadlift, how much I could pull off the ground, made me a better volleyball player, which is totally incorrect. You know, your mental strength and your ability to understand who you are and how to handle defeat and how to work through issues and self-coach. And those are the things that make you a better athlete in the long run, not how much you can lift. And so that was a bit of a long-winded answer. I apologize.
Yeah, no problem.
I just felt like I had so much more to share than hitting a ball over the net, and I wanted to explore that.
So what are you up to now?
Well, I guess a perfect segue. So in December, I wound up transitioning out of my business with a close friend of mine. So we owned a studio downtown Toronto, doing athletic conditioning for the general population. Super fun. It was everything that I wanted to do, but it wasn't in sport. My heart is in sport and giving back to youth. So I've created a business called Off-Ball Athlete. It's more of a movement, a culture, a philosophy, which is who are you and what are you doing and how do you live your life when you do not have the ball. And so I think current culture is really focused on ball, and I'm sure for you as a coach, focusing on the X's and O's, focusing on, you know, your quality touches and strategy. You know, when you're at practice, you're so focused on the ball, but arguably in volleyball, you only have the ball contacting your skin 10 seconds in an entire two or 3 hour match. So, you know, I let the script where that culture is very much train more, practice harder. You need to be training 3, 4, 5 hours a day. You know, I'm looking at it going, well, if you don't have the ball 99+% of the time, I think that there's an opportunity to make yourself better when you don't have the ball, so that when you do receive the ball in any way, you do have an opportunity with the ball, that opportunity shows up better, not defined by the ball, and you're so well structured physically and mentally without it that you're able to just make that contact so much more valuable. And so Off-Ball Athlete is really the start of that. So I'm now creating a movement, an app for organizations and teams and clubs, which is more about breath work and visualization and self-development, personal development. And then I have an Off-Ball Academy, which I regretfully had to put on pause this summer just because my father passed away 3 days ago. So I've been in the hospital for 2 months out in Vancouver Island. But the whole thing is around my life experience, all the courses that I've taken physically and mentally, all the books that I've read over the last decade, really brought that around how do you live, what are your goals, what's your identity without the ball, so that when you do have the ball, it all just comes together a lot better.
No, fair enough. You know, and I just want to sidetrack here. I follow you on Facebook. I follow you on Instagram, and I know how big of an inspiration your father was in your life. So I know our hearts go out to you and your family, and from all around the volleyball community regarding the passing of your father. And again, I really appreciate you taking the time to spend this moment with us, answering these questions and stuff like that in this time of your life when such tragedy has occurred. So I really appreciate it, Martin.
That brings me and I give back to the next generation because I've gone through the experiences that I've gone through, and when I was back, it was really changing because the point and not in a season, how can I package up all of my experiences, still go through some, but that's me a little bit more openly and invite more people to participate. And so, you know what, the passing of my father is total tragedy. My heart is as a father and what he was down, and also the community that surrounds me, and from other community, like as an example, Paul Men led a moment of silence before the men's final, the Van Open on Sunday, which is and it just made me realize community, people, and you give your life to a sport. It is so much more than that, and I really do think beach volleyball and volleyball in general, community. The last other things that maybe I took for granted before, which is why, once again, I'm just so excited to give back and to participate in making the sport so much better in Canada, because there's athletes, a lot of great that are trying really hard. I'll say people do it, but it's some mistakes that I've made. It's a lesson I'm really looking forward to sharing, so that I can help, looking forward to 60-year-old kids a little bit more self-aware.
No, fair enough. Yeah, no, I mean, the volleyball is definitely I was actually at the Vancouver Open this weekend, a great event, but the volleyball community is a small knit community that's definitely growing. So and it's there's a lot of people that come together and stuff like this. So it's great to know that there is a community that is so tight knit that look out for each other's backs and stuff like that regarding things that happen in life, right? So now with youth sports these days, there in the volleyball community, I definitely think there is kind of a misinterpretation, if you will, regarding club volleyball, school volleyball. Everyone thinks their kid's going to play on the national team, stuff like that. What are your thoughts on people, especially in your line of work now, who feel that their kid has to be a one-sport athlete rather than a multi-sport athlete? So for me personally, I think multi-sport athletes, if parents are willing to drive and, flip the bills on different sports, the kids should play as many sports as possible, what's your take on that?
Absolutely. Without a doubt, without question, the proof through research is astounding on being a multi-sport athlete, from energy perspective, from a lifelong health perspective, from a success perspective. I mean, it really isn't up for question on whether your child should play. It's play more, have as many chances to move and different circumstances as keep your body fresh, to keep your mind fresh, to keep you motivated. It is so important for kids to play a bunch of different sports and to keep it fun and to keep it engaging and to be motivated, to always have a little something that you're looking forward to versus every single day you're just doing that same thing. You know, kids are kind of losing their childhoods now because they're becoming pro athletes at 13, 14.
Totally agree.
And I really think it's a shame because the system has created this, and it's not the parents' fault. It's not the parents' fault. The parents are trying to do what's best for their kid. The parents are in it, and they want to create opportunities for their kids. And we can't vilify the parents because they don't know what they don't know. They want their kids to succeed. The kids want to play and think that they want to play. They don't necessarily know it. And the coaches and the clubs, you know, I understand that if everyone else is doing it, well, you need to compete and you need to engage in a way that you're maintaining your players and you're increasing the programming, and everyone wants to be competitive. But from a long-standing perspective of life and also just success in sport, the sooner you specialize, arguably the sooner you burn out, and the sooner you're going to start to experience more injuries and breakdown from a mental and physical standpoint.
I like that. The sooner you specialize, the sooner you burn out. Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it.
It's and I say that gently. I say that in a way it's not a negative thing. It's, you know, oh, I can't play volleyball full time. Like, no, why don't we play all these other things? I can do these things. Beach volleyball is training for indoor volleyball. That's the way I always saw it. Always.
Yeah.
Always. I snowboarded. I surfed. I played basketball. I played soccer. I played every single sport in high school. I didn't take one too seriously until I chose to go to Camosun College to play volleyball there, and I still was the rebel athlete that on Christmas break I'd go snowboarding and wouldn't tell my coach. Like, I loved doing the other things.
Yeah.
Because it brought me joy and it made me a better person. But we have a culture right now where young kids want to be the best, and they think that they have to do more to be more. And if you haven't tapped into Michael Gervais Finding Mastery podcast, Coach, I'd recommend you tap into that because it's the best podcast in the world right now on psychology and human performance. Young athletes, if you want to learn, you know, listen to somebody that Michael Gervais has. He's a sports psychologist for the Seattle Seahawks and an unbelievable human being. I think he was the director of high performance for Red Bull, so he's just like rogue, awesome, rebel athletes. Anyways, it's not about doing more to be more. It's about being more to do more. And so we're outsourcing our lives and all of these sports or one sport and playing it so much when really the more you can be as a human being based on your experiences that you have in your life, by living your life, by doing things, by experiencing different activities, by competing in different ways, arts, by doing solo ventures, reading, by all of these things, you become a better athlete because you can solve problems better based on what you've been through versus all you do is sit volleyball.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at a certain point, and this is your personal development is your competitive advantage. So, like, if you as an athlete think you playing more volleyball is your competitive advantage, you better realize that a lot of kids that think the same way. So how can we flip the script and say, you know what, I'm actually going to invest my time into making myself a better person. I'm going to invest my time into playing other things and being able to move better, because I'll tell you this, there's a big difference between making it and then having a career at it. And most kids and most people are thinking, I want to be a pro athlete, and they do everything that they possibly can to make it, and they sewer themselves and they do everything and guess what? When you make it, that's when it actually starts. And if you're broken, when you start, like, you now need to make a career of it. You need to last for 10 years. I watched Wimbledon, the athletes in their 30s that are just hitting their prime. Like, if you're broken at 17 or 18, good luck.
Yeah,
you need to think about making it in a great way and time than we think, and I think there's a lot of pressure, which is once again not the fault of the athletes or the coaches or the parents. Like it is what's happening in sport. You can get some take breaks. Do others have a primary, absolutely, but explore. Parents, do your best opportunities where you sign your kid up for absolute shit. You're doing them a disservice.
Mm-hmm.
Coach, care for the human being. It's as much as you want to create a winning program or a winning team, listen to your kid. It worked. If yes, well, maybe have a play day. One practice every 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Or do something different and it's fun and energizing. That still gets kids moving and sweating and builds team.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah.
Right now, and
Oh, you're cutting out here, Martin. Can you hear me?
Sorry, I'm in my backyard. I'm being around. It's a bit spotty. So we're just being conditioned to do more of the same thing because we think by doing more it will be better. But we need to focus on spreading that out a little bit and becoming better people and more well-rounded athletes.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the culture is changing. I don't think it's necessarily in a positive way. I think the sport's growing. That is a positive. But with that, yes. I think there's different sort of demons that come with that. Regarding for example, in the club system, there are some players that feel that they have to play 12 months a year. It's heading in that direction. I don't think it's a positive personally. That's just my personal opinion on it. But if they want to play 12 months a year and 8 months of the year or 9 months of the year it's indoor and 3 months of the year it's in beach, that's different. Rather than focusing strictly on their indoor game for 12 months of the year. I mean, kids need to be kids. Families need to be families. And I think, there's definitely, from when I played club back in BC with Greg Russell, it was definitely, I think club costed maybe $100 or $200. You got a T-shirt with a number on it, and you played in the odd tournament on weekends, and now it's parents and players and the system. It's more every year. It's more, and it's some teams here in Alberta, they're going every single weekend. There has to be time for family. And that's why I loved your comment about burnout is I unfortunately have seen athletes in the past have this vision of playing post-secondary, and they're being pushed on a parent side of things. They're getting pushed by their coaches and stuff like that, and by the time grade 12 comes around and they've graduated, they're just like, they haven't had that chance to be, a youth, a kid, and all that, and they burn out, and they don't, take the next step because they did it all. They did the amount of time in their, grade 8 to 12, years of, school, club, and extra training, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting seeing how I mean, again, it's a positive. The sport is growing, but there are definitely, like in anything, there are definitely flaws in the system, and it's interesting to see where it will go in the next 5 to 10 years. So, now you spoke about mental side regarding your game specifically.
Yes.
At the younger age groups, how do coaches implement that? And your answer could be obviously different based on the age of athlete. I mean, is this something that you focus on at, let's say at U13, U14, or is this something that you start focusing on at U16, 17, 18? Or is this something you focus on after, when you go into post-secondary for your first year?
Well, you know what? I think the sooner that you have exposure to mental training, the better. Now, obviously, the degree of complexity or the depth of that mental training for an 18-year-old should be different than a 10 or 11-year-old. But I think that the anchor or the foundation needs to be set early, or as early as possible. And something that I've invested a lot of time in and is massive interest for me is how the breath connects to mindfulness and connects to being present. And I think current culture with social media, with being on your cell phones every day, every minute, with being available 24/7 with phone calls and this and that, via emails, Snapchat, not being able to pull away from your screen. I could go on, my friend. Gratification, needing instant gratification, all of that those are distractions. And if you are addicted, which I hate to say it, but likely if you're listening to this and you have a cell phone, you are likely some way, shape, or form addicted to your cell phone and the self-validation that it gives you. That's a distraction.
Right.
And the more that you outsource your happiness and the more that you give that away and you need your cell phone to make you happy, the less that you'll be able to be without your cell phone.
Yeah.
Or without the thing that is your anchor. And so when you're out on the court, I don't care how old you are, if you are not able to be yourself and have your own anchor, be it breath, be it, I am, it is something, your own affirmation. I am good enough. And you can say that to yourself and calm yourself down in the moment. Pressure makes things show more. And as we get older, the pressure increases.
Yeah.
U14 national championships is a ball game. So you better be good at handling pressure. And I'm seeing a lot of kids not able to focus on being present and not able to handle situations. Their brain just it flies away immediately. Like they can't control it. And so if you're on serve receive in a pressure situation and you can't control your brain, if you can't focus on the ball, if you can't tell yourself after a mistake in a pressure moment that you're okay and that you're not your identity with that mistake because you own your own validation, you know that you're better than the mistakes that you made. If you can't tell yourself that, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be in trouble. And so I think mental training isn't about becoming a guru meditator on top of the mountain, and that's not what we're talking about here. It's about being centered. Can you center yourself wherever you are, doing whatever you're doing? And breath work is a great entry point. So I'm actually a head coach on Wednesday nights at the Milton Edge Beach Volleyball Club, and we do 30 minutes of a 2-hour training session all off ball. And so we do 30 minutes of mindfulness, breathing, and physical training without practicing movements and situations and envisioning situations and calming the body with breath and then so that when we show up on the court with the ball, we've done it before in a focused way so that we then have control over the situation. And I have 9 and 10-year-olds learning, hey, this thing where I pull air into my lungs, push it out, that is actually connected to my brain. And that actually calms my body. And if I know how to use my breath, I can actually control the present environment wherever I am. And, in 3 weeks, 3 sessions, it went from being this weird, awkward, laughing matter. I have the entire club come into a circle, arm over shoulder. So we're a big circle, and I stand in the middle. And we do breath training. And the week, it was real weird. It was a laughing matter.
Yeah.
And kids were super uncomfortable. And, you get the classic, 10-year-old boy with a 13-year-old girl not refusing to put their arms over each other. I was like, you guys need to get over yourselves.
Yeah.
Are you guys is your insecurity going to break the circle of this entire club? Are you going to be responsible for not allowing the culture of this club to really sink in and they get over themselves? And then we start breathing. And we start visualizing ourselves in situations. And we start to consciously slow the heart rate down or increase the heart rate based on the breath cycle. And in 3 sessions now, the athletes run in, arms over each other, and we're able to breathe. And now that will translate into performance for the rest of their lives, volleyball or not. And that's the exciting piece. So when we talk about mental training, it starts with the breath for me, and you can do that anywhere. And you can do that at any age. So I encourage anybody to just, okay, how can I use my breath to increase my presence and increase my performance and increase my mental control? And that's just a great way to start, and anybody can do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's definitely something that is overlooked, or coaches feel like it's like, oh, I just don't have time for that. I need to get my 50 ball touches in here, or we need to do this, we need to do that. So it's kind of, I think, one of those things that gets pushed to the side, if you will. And I think if coaches dedicate themselves to incorporating that into their practice plans, it becomes that culture. It becomes the norm for athletes. And, stronger athletes, stronger teams will be the result of, even if it's, I know you do it for half an hour, even if it's, 10, 15 minutes or whatever it is, right? But as long as it's consistent, and, that's, I think there's a flaw, if you will, again, when you talk about the system in youth sports. I always refer to, growing up, I played piano, and you would go to, one day a week, you would go to your teacher's house, whatever, and do some lessons, and, you were expected to do stuff at home. And I think with youth sports, people might not have a volleyball court in their house or in their backyard, but doing breathing exercises, doing dry land training is something that is a must for athletes who want to compete at whatever level of competition that is. Again, my personal thoughts, what are your thoughts on the dry land training side of youth sports?
Absolutely. And the off-ball culture that I'm bringing forward, I'm not poo-pooing everything that's happening in culture. I'm not saying this is wrong, this is this, although I have my opinions on it, which I think sports specialization and early specialization is not what we should be doing. But my standpoint is, okay, well, if this is the expectation, if this is the situation that we're in, well, we darn well better be controlling our bodies and our minds earlier to at least create a framework around increased expectations of younger specialization, so we don't hurt ourselves, and so that at least we can maximize the situation. So my solution to all of that is, absolutely, we have to start being more conscious with our movement and conscious with our training, and owning 15 minutes of movement practice a day, whether it be, dynamic, whether it be mobility, whether it be breath. Like, if you're 13, 14, 15, and you think right now that you're going to make it, if you're not investing time for yourself, if you don't have your own personal practice, if you don't have an understanding of, hey, my shoulder's a bit tweaked today, or my ankle's a bit sore, if you aren't looking on YouTube for instance, Mobility WOD, Kelly Starrett, if you're not looking on how do I take care of myself, well, I hate to say it, but that starts now. Your ankle doesn't solve itself. Your hurt shoulder doesn't solve itself magically. You are responsible for that. I think we're not really promoting that culture. I think it's show up to practice hurt, show up to practice tweaked, just show up, do everything right now repeatedly, don't take time for yourself. And so if athletes aren't standing up for themselves and becoming more self-aware in their situation, which that practice is, hey, about myself, I'm going to learn about my body, and I'm going to take care of my body, or I'm going to prepare my body. If you're not doing that, there's a good chance that you're likely going to get hurt at some point in time, and it's not going to be convenient. A part of what I wanted to say earlier, Coach, was, if you don't have an off season, your body is going to make sure that you have an off season, and it's going to be painful, and it's not going to be convenient. So.
That's great insight there. I love it. That's awesome. That is so true.
That's a pretty easy way. Okay, do I want my own off season where I can control it, still having fun, and I'm competing in a different sport and still learning about myself, or do I want an off season where my foot's in a brace or my knees in a brace, and I might actually lose the opportunity to play the sport that I love so much because I didn't take a break for 3 years.
Yeah.
And that I think, there's a certain level of self-practice that can prevent that. But at the end of the day, more is not better. And so self-practice and your own ritual and your own understanding of your body, which, you have to become a professional earlier now to make it. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. But becoming a professional doesn't mean practicing more. It means understanding yourself more.
Right.
If that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah. So I guess, what words of wisdom would you give to athletes today in the culture that we currently have that are, obviously have ambitions to, follow in a similar path that you did, and this could be, on the beach court or indoor, but just in sport in general. What would you, let's say, warn them of, advise them of, be aware of?
Oh, that's such a great question, and there's so many different ways to go about that. Something that really stands out for me when you ask that is I went to Thompson Rivers University last year, and in a total of 36 hours, I did 10 hours of mental and physical work with my good friend Vince Luciani, who's on Instagram at Legacy Coaching or at the Legacy Coaching.
Okay.
I highly recommend checking him out. But he's kind of internal stuff, and I'm about life systems and physicality and the mental side. And we did a complete research for each one of those athletes and culture, and it was really special. And a part of that was, I broke them down physically into zeros. So a couple guys puked, and I just showed them, okay, you think that you're strong or you think that you're not capable? I'm gonna bring you to a place that you never knew that existed, and we're gonna do it as a team. And there's a lot of life lessons there, but we can get into that another time.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing that I saw was that when we were creating stories for each person, so we were giving each athlete an opportunity to write down who they were, what they wanted to do, what their validation was, like how they wanted other people to validate them or to love them, how they wanted to love the world, like basic questions that are identity, who are you?
Yeah.
The hands that went up and said, hey, can I write this? Or, hey, can I say this? Or, is this okay? And I walked up to that young man and I just said, you can do whatever you want. And you don't need to ask permission for anything that you want, or you don't need to ask anything of other people. You can do it yourself, and you can define yourself, and you can write your own story. Like, you are in 100% of control. And I would see this all of a sudden, an 18, 19, 20-year-old young man be like, oh, you mean I can do this for myself? You mean I can say this about myself? You mean I can do this? Like, for real? It's like, yes. And it blew my mind that people were just waiting for other people to do things for them. And they weren't taking full control, or not because they didn't want to, it's because they didn't know that they couldn't. And so if you're 13, 14, 15, 16, actually any age for that matter, like, who are you? And you can write that own story, and you can do your thing, and you can build that out. You don't need to ask for permission for everything. And if someone tells you that you're something, like, you can say, no, that's not me, because you don't know who I am, and you don't know what I'm capable of. And creating your own story, I think, is so important. And I just realized that so many young athletes, either they don't know what they don't know, or they think that someone else is going to do it for them, or they just don't have a wake-up call early enough to be able to create a point of reference where they're like, oh, right, I'm in charge. And so it doesn't matter that in charge is, but it's taking responsibility and writing your own story is something I just see more and more, where kids just don't know that they have that choice to create their own story.
That is awesome. So you did that. Was that what, like a 72-hour stint with Pat Henley's men's team at TRU?
That's correct. Yeah. So after their season, where I think they went 1-22.
Yeah.
I got a call from Pat Henley, who was aware of my transition into what I was getting into, and we know each other from the West Coast.
Yeah.
And one of the parents of the athletes was really into what I was doing, and I'd done some work with him on a training level back in Toronto. And we created this really incredible cultural retreat where we went and did a complete mental and physical reset for their culture and for the individuals. And I believe that they had a much better season this year, but to create a turnaround takes a lot of time. It's just not, you can't go from being the worst to being the best overnight, but we changed the lives of every single member that participated in that event, both athlete and coach, man. And that was powerful. And I just want to take a second. I know I'm ranting here, but
No,
I'm trying to fit I'm trying to fit as much as I can in.
Yeah.
If you're a coach and you're not living in what you ask of the athletes, if you're not leading what you're demanding from your athletes, then the athletes will see right through it. And what I loved about that coaching staff was that their entire coaching staff participated in everything.
Yeah.
And there were grown men crying. There were grown men doing self-work that they put off for years. There were grown men that hadn't trained physically, and they gave 100%. It wasn't about how good they did. It wasn't about that. It was about, are you pushing yourself? Are you willing to go the distance with your team? Yes or no? And hold the distance, and they were better for it. Staff really set the tone because they were willing to coaches. I think sometimes as coaches we're afraid to fail. We're afraid to make mistakes because we're in a leadership position. But coaches be just as vulnerable as the athlete, and to athletes just as much as the athletes listen to the coaches.
Yeah, I think there definitely are types of coaches out there that it's do as I say, not as I do. And I think if coaches were more hands-on these days, and kind of giving, breaking down their own security walls, if you will, I think it's beneficial to the sport. I think it's beneficial to the athlete and the program that they represent. And from being in a leadership role on a club level, I truly believe there has to be, prior to season, that type of atmosphere amongst coaches, and having coaches on their own agendas hurts a program, and doing coach bonding events, which whatever that is, if that's doing breathing exercises, doing building exercises, that is it really transitions to the athlete. So taking time and concentrating on that from kind of a club level or a team level, I think is really important. So, and that's interesting. I didn't know you did that with the TRU guys. So
it's Everett Delorme of Volleyball Source. He came and he videotaped the whole thing. The plan was to create a documentary. Just timing didn't work out, unfortunately, on creating that. But there's some really incredible content footage that hopefully we'll still be able to do something with and share. At this point, I definitely am moving back into that space, and that was the first time I did that and just went all in, and it was so incredible. So looking
awesome.
to build that service out for clubs and for teams. But, there's a lot of room in all sports, not just volleyball, where you drop the ball, build yourself a little bit more, create a better system for yourself. Another thing that I love sharing is, winners have wins and champions have systems. And by that I mean, if you go out and you reinvent yourself and you win every single time, that's great. But you could be broken or lost. And every time that you're trying to reinvent yourself and you're recreating every single time, there's not a lot of strength in that versus championship programs and systems that they live by, the integrity that they have as a human being. those are choices that they don't have to make every single day because they're not reinventing the wheel every single day. And so systems are really, really important. And I see a lot of people being victims of their circumstance, but really it's because they're not planning ahead on a day-to-day, or they haven't thought about how can I create a framework around my time management and my nutrition so that I don't have to make those decisions, and then all of a sudden my performance shows up in a different way because I've already made up my mind and I've committed to being better at those things. And those are simple life choices that you make that show up when you have the ball.
Yeah, right on. Well, Martin, I really appreciate your time. You know, you're a true inspiration, obviously, to all volleyball athletes in Canada and in the volleyball world. You know, I know I took a lot of time out of your day here, and obviously the interview went longer than anticipated. But you know, it's been awesome talking to you, and I hope that we can make contact soon and see what's going on with you with off the ball and all that stuff in the future.
I appreciate it. And you know what? If this has hit a nice little note with anyone listening, I put as much good quality content out as possible on Instagram at Offball Athlete, as well as Martin J. Reader on Instagram. But I'm definitely building talks and programs, and they get a lot of dialogue. We didn't even hit parents. You know, that's a hot topic.
Ooh, that's a hot topic.
I'm creating a suite of talks where I would like to represent organizations on parent nights and talk to parents about, you know, how can we really create a better culture around parenting and youth development that doesn't involve parents not living into the expectations or standards that they're setting for their kids, and how can we, you know, to get parents to be better and demonstrate the behavior they want from their kids.
Yeah.
And so I want to be a part of a culture moving forward that doesn't give parents the free pass because they're part of the process.
Yeah.
If you drop your kid off and expect the coach or teacher or whatever to make your kid a champion, and somehow think that your actions or what you say or how you hold yourself doesn't reflect on your child, then unfortunately you need a wake up call. So that's something that I'm really moving into, and I'm looking forward to it. I'd love to participate and work with you possibly in person at some point in time in coming time.
Yeah, well, I think that would be a fantastic idea, and I think that's an opportunity for another interview here in the near future regarding that topic in itself, because there's you know, definitely a culture change regarding that issue in society and stuff like that. And again, I could probably get into that for another 2 hours. So we'll definitely arrange something for that hot topic, if you will.
Absolutely. And I'll say one more thing.
Yeah.
I spoke at the Ontario Volleyball Association Coaches Symposium, and there was a lot of dialogue around parents. Like, I'll tell you, likely 40-50% of the dialogue was around how can we handle parents, and you know, there may have been one or two conversations where a coach was complaining about a parent or complaining about a situation, and I couldn't help but think, you know, if you're a coach and you think the parent's the problem and you want to cut the parent out, well, there is no solution that doesn't involve the parent, right? Like,
right.
The parent has to be a part of it. So rather than resent the culture, how can we actually bring the parents in a more positive way, because they have to be a part of it. And once again, like I started off with, you know, the parents are doing it because they love their kids. So they're not trying to be malicious. Their intentions are honorable. So there's a lot to work with. But I really don't think that we have found a great system, and every culture is different.
Yeah.
In teams and clubs, right? But how can we just create a better framework to incorporate parents and give them some tools and bring them in a positive way, have better communication between coaches and parents, because the parents have to be involved. And so if you think that the best solution is having the parent not participate in your culture, I think there's a lot of room for opportunity there. And so, yeah, looking forward to exploring that conversation another time, man.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, and we definitely will be. I assure you on that one. That's I'm sure we created this new Facebook page for, it's called Volleyball Coaches of Canada, and it's on Facebook. And I'll be posting this interview with you on there as a resource to coaches from coast to coast. And I hope that people listen into it. I hope the culture grows in a positive direction. That's what this is all about, and I know that topic specifically, a lot of people will tune in for that one. I assure you that. So,
amazing.
But yeah, no, let's touch base soon. I really appreciate you being with me today, and sorry the Instagram live thing didn't work. I'll figure that out for the future here, and we'll see what's going on in a couple months.
All good, and maybe it was just as well because we got an hour and 15 minutes here. Instagram Live, I think, is a bit more of a short-term platform, so
yeah,
it was probably more a bigger reason. It's allowed us to really dive in.
Yeah.
If people enjoyed this conversation, I have an off-ball podcast with, I think, 14 or 15 episodes right now of pretty much the people that I was most excited to speak with and interview around the world, be it performance and coaching. There's a great hour and 45-minute conversation with Randy Stoke, beach volleyball. It's, there's a lot of things that are close to my heart. My season 2 will actually be getting into the volleyball community and really doing like what you're doing is try to lead positive solutions and dialogues around how we can make volleyball a better sport in Canada and removing it to the potential that it has, because volleyball is such a great sport. And it's really right now. We have 2 women on the podiums. Top 2 teams in the world right now for beach volleyball are Canadian.
Yeah.
On the women's side, so it's a great time. And how can we really take this time to impact the community at large?
Totally agree, Martin. But we'll let's touch base soon, and we'll go from there.
Okay, awesome. Appreciate